Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we'll be talking a bit about the first tournament I competed in the March-April LD resolution of Resolved. In democracy, a free press ought to prioritize objectivity over advocacy. Now, to Jacob Cruz, if you'd like to skip to the end of the video, you'll see the credentials to email me for the document, and anyone else who would like to, you can do that as well. So in the tournament, I only lost one round, and that was because I was mean in cross-examination and in my rebuttals. Apparently I had a parent judge and they thought I was a little too aggressive. That doesn't matter too much since it was like in a inconsequential tournament, but we'll go over like the main arguments and unexpected ones that some people ran. To keep the debaters' information confidential, I won't disclose who they are nor their evidence points. Just know that I keep track of each of their data points along with their taglines and others, and we'll just look into like their main thoughts. So one round I went against a person that was, not gonna lie, surprisingly inexperienced debater. When they were the negative, and they somehow made their way into champion division in one tournament, and they've been only in two in their entire career. Now this is like a very easy round, but from a novice, their approach was like largely from like the freedom of speech approach. So they mostly said that we have an obligation to the right of the freedom of speech and expression, as most debaters will take that route to wherever. So we'll just go right on here. So most of the debaters I went against took like the generic routes for this tournament, but it was the first tournament in my district on the topic. There were some like ought implies can frameworks, which if you don't know what those are, it's essentially saying that if we can't do the resolution, there's no obligation to do it. So sorry, my apologies. So like if we can't do something, then we have no obligation to do it. So it like dooms the actor to failure, and Greisk is like a philosopher on that if you want to look at it. So there are some like ought implies can deviations, although no one ran them as like a complete contention, and more like just an observation or like a passive comment and like cross-examination on their rebuttal speeches. The most unexpected argument that was made in the resolution was about like preserving people's mental states. And that person like essentially talked about like the headline stress disorder. So we'll just put like, mental disorders or something. So they like really failed at showing uniqueness with the mental disorder because it's not really unique to like either side. And there are some other ununique arguments and unique arguments, but most are personally run by my team. So I won't like disclose though as of this moment, but most of them tie into like real scenarios in which we need democratic peoples to listen to the voices of the press for like various important reasons. And then anyways, in the second round, my opponent was on the affirmative, but they basically gave up their constructive, and they basically had a half-hearted speeches from then on. They essentially gave up because I spammed the flow a little excessively, I have to admit, in that speech. They essentially ran a contradicting framework that included Kant's categorical imperative, although like after testing their knowledge in philosophy and cross-examination, they didn't know like a whole lot of it. They only knew that Kant was against lying, basically. They essentially talked about how objectivity just makes the press more effective and efficient. And then the third round, the opponent was better than the others, although their constructive was weak. This is the person that ran the headline stress disorder. They essentially said that we should protect people's physical and mental health. They tried to tie this into progressive movements, protests along with the headline stress disorder. I essentially just talked about the benefits of those movements along with like the difference between propaganda and advocacy and the uniqueness of the argument and whatever. And this also tied into the order. So against like the mental disorders, I would just tie in the arguments about how it's like non-unique basically. And then you could like run other attacks in the thing. Forgive me for my spelling. And then ought implies can is extremely easy to figure out. It's just you have to prove how it's possible in like any way. So you could like first prove how there are objective prices. So like, yeah. an example of this would be like headline news. Although they're like discontinued, they're a perfect example of a objective press. And then you can also see that there is at one point there was like objective news, which any news can be objective because you can see that like sometimes they report on objective events and they don't have to include advocacy. And then you can also imply the prioritize argument. Forgive my spelling today, it's really bad. So you could also engage the prioritize argument and talk about how we are prioritizing objectivity and not getting rid of advocacy, and because of this we can see that we can still do this in the resolution. So on implies can is like really easy to disprove in this topic because of the prioritize argument, and so is like the freedom of speech and expression. You can pretty much just like bring up different things about the resolution and freedom of speech. Like you can extend the definition of prioritize first of all, and then you can also extend the definition of objective along with about like how if anything the press enhances the voices of the people, because the press is no longer makes up falsified evidence or claims about point of views. I know some people that enhances voices. I know some people that basically say that the freedom of speech and impression is of the press, but the press just has the freedom of expression and speech to criticize like governmental policies. So like as long as they have that in front, they're fine. And objectivity is not really limiting that. They can still have concrete sources or whatever. They just can't, in objectivity, just depending on your definition, they just can't like simply just make up random information depending on your definition. For mine, it's an objective method. So essentially what I'll be saying is that it includes like as much of the scientific like process they can inside the articles, like that aren't completely political articles. And there's like a certain definition on that and stuff like that. And then I won't go into too much detail in the tournament, so we'll stop at like the round that I lost. So in the round I lost, my opponent essentially talked about the freedom of expression along with like the relativity of objectivity. Their case was easy, like perm and disprove as the affirmative and show like contradictions within their constructive, although I lost because the judge said I was too aggressive. So I suppose like the takeaway is just to watch your tone in debates along with your expressions, but I don't necessarily know how I lost, but apparently I did. At least it wasn't like that important of a tournament. So in conclusion, no one really tried to take hold of the prioritized definition as the affirmative out of the people I debated. People should focus more on it as it gives the affirmative more of an advantage, although you may want to show how it sets you apart from the negative, since most of them can make it seem like it's borderline advocacy. Now this is for Jacob. Jacob, I'll go ahead and put this inside a pocket so you can see it better. Or actually no, I'll just put it in bigger font. So Jacob, this is my YouTube email, and anyone else can also send me like things to this email if they want to. It's just smdebate and yt@gmail.com. So you can just email me what you'd like. You can email what you'd like to do, whether I share like the original document or the one you want us to collaborate on, or whichever you prefer. And if anyone else would like to email me, they can do that as well. But it may take me like a day to respond. Just like include whether you want to collaborate on a document or just share a document or whatever you guys prefer, or just to like communicate with me. And additionally, I apologize for the substance of this video as it is like a little lacking, but I'm focusing on like the bigger debates like districts and regionals and state coming up. And I hope you enjoyed the content. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below if you have any questions or input. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.